Welcome to The Verdict. Tom Fair is an award-winning trial lawyer who knows there is more to our stories than what you see on the surface. He has built his law firm, Fair Law, into one of the top injury and employment trial firms representing people in California. Join us each week as Tom explores the successes, challenges, and lessons learned from some incredible people. Hit subscribe, follow Fair Law on Facebook and Instagram, and let's get to the verdict. And now, here is your host, Tom Fair.
Welcome to The Verdict, everybody. Today, we have a special guest, Danny Sanchez. He's a highly recognized social entrepreneur and leader in youth violence prevention and redirection. He is the founder and executive director of the City Peace Project and author of Post-Traumatic Quest. He serves the community as a passionate youth violence prevention activist and Latino leadership advocate. The City Peace Project exists as a catalyst that empowers youth to thrive in every sphere of life. Through personal mentorship, this program promotes life-altering values and skills that equip students to cultivate lives marked by love and peace. Welcome to The Verdict, Danny.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, of course. Well, we're happy to have you. I was saying to you earlier, you were actually one of the first people I wanted to interview and talk to, and I'm just glad after so many guests, we're finally able to reconnect with you and have you on.
Yeah.
I love so much of what you're doing. And, before we sort of get into that, I'm very curious to hear a little bit about your book, Post-Traumatic Quest. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Post-Traumatic Quest is my quest to transcend trauma, turn my pain to purpose, and find peace. It's a memoir. I dealt with a lot of issues, and I know we've all dealt with issues, right? In this world, everyone deals with pain in some way, shape, or form, right? Whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, we all deal with it, right? And I had this radical transformation through my faith in Christ. But I know, and it was a good thing that happened to me, because if you read the book, there's a lot of things that I went through that were very difficult from a very young age. And I didn't deal with a lot of my issues. And it was tough for me to be who I really wanted to be when I was hiding some of the stuff that I dealt with. I was embarrassed of my past. There were things that I didn't want to talk about. When I started working with youth, I noticed a lot of the youth were going through the same things that I was going through. So I wrote this book to encourage them that they can get through their current circumstance. A lot of them are dealing with, I was incarcerated when I was young, juvenile hall. I was actually in juvenile hall during the Loma Prieta earthquake. That was a traumatizing event. It was crazy. I was locked in a room. I was,
wow.
I was in prison during 9/11, and there was another crazy event. So I was like the school to prison pipeline. I just kept getting, there's a word we use called railroading. I would take convictions because I wanted to get out, and they all piled up. And I'm working with kids that are in the same situation, whether they're incarcerated, whether like me, my dad was incarcerated. I grew up without a dad in the home. He was in and out of prison when I was young. I remember my home being raided, just a lot of different things that I dealt with: drug abuse, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and all these things. And when I started working with youth, I started to see that they're dealing with the same thing. So again, I wanted to give them, hey, I've been where you've been, but we can get beyond that. But what I started to realize also was that educators, administrative staff, parents, social workers needed to know some of this insight, to help them when they're working with these kids. Because again, the book was originally because I have a gang past, and it was supposed to be focused on the gang past. But as I started, just rethinking everything, I looked at the other traumas I was dealing with, right? And I noticed that, a lot of kids were, like I had suicidal thoughts, I tried to commit suicide. I, to take away some of the pain that I was feeling, I ran away, and all these other things that I dealt with. I started to realize, okay, this book needs to be for these kids that are dealing with this right now. And I want to give them hope, and I want to give them, a picture of what it is to get beyond, again, those current circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much there. And as people having to go through those struggles, some people are going to resonate more with somebody who's gone through the same thing that they're going through, kind of like in your position and the youth that you're reaching out to, and they see you as a model almost where, hey, you've gone through this, but you were able to overcome a lot of it and actually use that pain and turn it into love and turn it into something positive. This book that you wrote, when did that come out?
Well, it came out about a year and a half ago, and we actually started writing it over 7 years ago, and then we shelved it. And then during COVID, we wanted to just go back to it, and that's where all the revisions came. Again, we were dealing with COVID. I was working with schools, and we did a lot of work. We're frontline workers. We were taking food and other supplies to families that were in need, dropping it off at their doorstep. We were doing food distribution. There was just a lot we were doing. And I personally felt the hit of COVID mentally and emotionally, and I started to notice that students weren't logging in. Students were changing their login names to names like I'm depressed. They were wearing their emotions on their sleeve. And so when we really felt like we need to get this book out and we wrote it at a level where the kids can understand it, short chapters. We gave about 500 copies to the Santa Clara County Juvenile Hall for incarcerated youth. Any kid that asks, because of generous donors, they're able to have a copy of their book, whether at their school or whether we meet them anywhere. So, the thing also is that, I think that a lot of the, when we wrote the book, we wanted to make sure that we're connecting with these kids, we're getting them the support they need. Because again, that's the main vision of the book, was to help the students. And because I just gave you some of the highlight, like some of the things that I dealt with, but we deal with things that there are some kids that are experimenting with drugs, right? There are some kids that are starting to, are curious about crime and hearing things, whether it's on TV or music, and they're talking about it and they want to be involved in these types of things, or gangs and all these different things that we want to be preventative, but we also do intervention with kids that are already in this. So, and a lot of parents don't know. They don't know that their kids are dealing with this. I have to make calls sometimes like, hey, your kid was suspended because they had drugs on them, or they had a fight and it was gang related. And some parents, and I know these parents, I talk to them, and a lot of them are good parents. They have no idea. And this is not just for, low income communities. It's everywhere. Drug abuse is rampant, and we know that how deadly fentanyl is. There's kids out there taking what they think is, Xanax, but it's mixed with fentanyl or other type, other type of prescription drugs that are being laced with things that can kill them. So when I share this, people might think, in the beginning, like, oh, my family doesn't have a history of, incarceration or a history of this, but this is out there. And believe me, the Silicon Valley is very diverse. There's ultra rich and there's ultra poor, and we are in some areas where we're right in the middle. So I talk with everyone. I have kids at all levels that I work with. I work at high schools, I work at junior highs, and I work at middle schools. So I don't want this to be focused on, I didn't want this to be focused just on kids that are, that are marginalized. It's all of our kids are dealing with it. And some of them wear it on their sleeve, and some of them cover it up. Some of them are hiding their addictions, but we know that a lot of our kids out there are addicted or making these decisions, like these risky decisions with their lives,
I think you hit on just such a salient point for all of us to keep in mind, is that this isn't something that only affects children that are marginalized or people that are marginalized. And this isn't something that only affects somebody who came from a family where a parent may have been incarcerated or may have abused drugs or alcohol. I mean, this is a problem that affects all youth, regardless of race, color, creed, economic standing. And I can tell you, I was very fortunate. My parents were able to put me in a private school, right? And we had a lot of affluent people, and obviously I'm not going to name names, but
Yeah.
children from affluent backgrounds, they ran into the same problems, and ironically, maybe not ironically, but some of the kids from the more affluent backgrounds actually were intrigued by this idea of doing something criminal or getting involved in gangs, and it was just something that does and it continues to happen. So the fact that you're not focusing on just one group, but you're open to helping anybody, and not just somebody that's been, that's already involved in this, but just from a preventative measure, I think it's just a powerful message. And this idea that parents have no idea, that seems to be the case oftentimes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many times that we talk to parents and they're in denial of it, or they just have no idea. And hey, there's tagging maybe on their backpack, or for some parents that are looking, what are they carrying in their bag? Do they have half? Because some drugs are used with squirt. Like they'll put Xanax in squirt. And they'll keep like a little quarter of a bottle of Xanax in there. There's a lot of things that they can look online and look up. What does this mean? What do the texts mean? And just a lot of these things. And then there's numbers 13, 14 that are that are gang numbers, that are identified with, or a block, or just all these things, right? But also, there are a lot of families that I'm working with that have no parents, again, like myself, right? There are families and that are dealing with that are low income, and that some of them, they don't have very many options. We try to give all students options, but a lot of the kids that we work with have no options, right? Some of them live in a gang neighborhood and again, I'm from the Silicon Valley. When you think about the Silicon Valley, you think about technology, you think about stock, you think about, all the money that's there. And believe me, it's here. But there's also this very marginalized communities in our area where there's undocumented families, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're families that are on welfare, families that, they're struggling, they can't get some of the supports they need that we're trying to help. And some of the students that I work with, their only option is to which they think is their only option is to sell drugs or to steal and do things like that. And so we want to open up the options for them when we help them. I am I do connect with before COVID, taking tours of Silicon Valley, businesses, Google. We had tours of Google, Yahoo, Amazon, and people there were taking us on tours and letting them know it's not just about being an engineer and math and science. There's a lot of other things they can learn there. So the kids would come back excited, like, wow, and there is a door for me to be a part of this, because from East San Jose, which is a predominantly Latino area in San Jose, to the Silicon Valley, it might be on a map a couple of miles. Like if I turn in any direction from where I live, half hour, Tesla, Google, Apple, all these companies are right there, right? But it couldn't be further from them for them to attain that, right? They think there's no access for them. So we're trying to let them know, hey, there is access and you can do it. And we're going to help you to the best of our ability to get connected and supported. So because I'm from that community here in San Jose, I'm from East San Jose. I grew up with a single parent, lived most of my time with my grandparents. I had no one to really kind of look up to or look out for me. And, I had no hope, no goals. But when my life changed, I started to realize, like I can do something. Things are possible. And I share with the kids, like, you can do whatever you want. Dream big.
Yeah. That's amazing. Tell us a little bit about the City Peace Project. I know you got a shirt on, the City Peace Project. Can you tell us how that started?
Well, it was birthed from my passion, again, to help youth. When I was at the church, I'm an ordained pastor. I was a youth pastor. I work with kids, and we had a visit from our mayor at our church, reaching out to the faith community for help with our gang violence. Even, again, you don't hear about that at Silicon Valley. There's no, hey, we got all these gangs here. We just, again, see technology. And, San Jose is over 1 million people, but we have between 5 to 7,000 validated gang members, that have been validated by our police department, and they're known. And on top of that, could be double for the ones that aren't, right? And so my church was in a more affluent community, and I was there, and I met our mayor, our former mayor, and I talked with the gang task force, leadership, and I created a crisis response program for the gang task force in partnership with the mayor's office. And what we did is we did homicide response for youth violence and bedside intervention for those who are injured. And San Jose had a 25-year high in gang violence, which was we had 18 gang-related homicides the year after we piloted the program when we launched, and we had 46 homicides in our city. And this is something that's not known for San Jose to have, this type of problem. And so we were reaching out to the families. We provide, spiritual care, monetary donations for funerals, because no one expects their 14-year-old to be shot in a drive-by shooting. Food for the family, and all types of different supports for the families, right? And I remember there was one family in particular, was a single dad. His son had just turned 18. He was shot down the street from his home. His dad actually heard the gunshot and didn't know it was his son until hours later. And I remember, meeting with the dad. That's what we do. We follow up with the family. We support them, find out what the needs are. And he asked if I would, if I could share at the funeral, because I'm an ordained pastor. And so, of course, I said, yes, we're going to help you. We would get facilities for families, not this family, but churches and other faith organizations would, let us use their facilities, because families, some of them couldn't afford to have funerals for their children. And so at this particular funeral, I remember standing there and looking at the pictures. And this young man, I know that his dad put a lot into his life. He had vacations. He was in baseball leagues and, and all these different things. And when it was time for guests to share about, memories of this young man, usually that takes about 10 or 15 minutes. It was 2 hours of coaches, of teachers, of family members just sharing, and broken friends, broken, the senseless loss of life. And I remember there was I looked out as I was listening to the family speak, and there was people out there. You could tell they were gang affiliated. You could smell alcohol. You could see family members. You could see friends. You can smell marijuana. It was just every type of face that was out there. And I felt like in my heart, like God was telling me, like, they're like sheep without a shepherd. You need to shepherd these kids. You need to help them. And with a good conscience, I felt like I don't want to be there after if I'm not being proactive in helping these families. So that was the birth of the City Peace Project. I remember going to a local McDonald's. I was walking by, and some of the kids that had attended one of the funerals that I shared at, they started calling me the priest. Like, hey, you're the priest that shared at the funeral. They didn't know pastor or priest or what the difference was, right? They just knew that I was someone spiritual that helped people. And I noticed that all these doors started to open, and doors started to open for schools, and we started to create programs for schools. And now we are from pre-K through 12th grade, the City Peace Project. We do mentoring, we do social emotional learning. Though I am a man of faith, our program is a community-based organization. We also do conflict mediation and resolution. We support students in all different ways. We do something after the pandemic, coming back to campus. There was a lot of heightened anger. There were a lot of fights, and in all my years of being on campuses, I've been on campuses for over 10 years. I never felt this experience, this tension that was on the campus, and so many fights. And So I really felt like, what can I do to break this wall down? So we started giving out chips and pizza to the kids and broke the wall down. And now, like, it's called proactive peacemaking. We're creating this space for fun, because in my book, the opposite of pain and trauma is joy and fun. And so
Yeah.
every week, every time we're at a campus, we bring music out. We buy pizza, we buy chips. People generously donate all this, all this food for us, or to take kids out. The kids that are involved in gangs or drugs, or whether they're just struggling with school. We're helping all these kids every day. So that's basically like an overview of what the City Peace Project is and what we do on a campus. For the guests that are watching, if you just look at our Instagram, the City Peace Project, you'll get a visual of what I'm talking about. I can't believe that, I get to do this for a living. I get to go out there and have fun and hang out with these wonderful kids and students and teachers and staff and others that are on campuses.
Yeah. I mean, just this idea of trying to, bring down the tension and put these kids in a good mood. I mean, that can have such a ripple effect, and also, forge relationships between the kids, in a positive way, so that, they're not out there, taking out their aggression or what's going on in their lives, because, they're dealing with so much just on other people. Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced, just trying to get the City Peace Project going and just trying to help these youth?
Oh, can I share something else really quick about the City Peace Project? Just some data, right? Like, one of our schools, in a known area where there's gangs and a lot of violence and drugs, and one of our schools had, I believe it was 146 suspensions when I started. The next year we dropped it down to 20. I just want to share.
Wow.
Yeah. It's in collaboration with the principal and with the team there, but the principal said, it's had a lot to do with your program being here and being connected with the kids. I think some of the challenges are, again, going back to the Silicon Valley, if it doesn't affect you, then it's not your problem. I think a lot of people think like that, and that's everywhere. And I'm not going to even say every big city. Anywhere we have kids, we have students, we have young people that might not have a lot of options. They need support. They need guidance. They need an adult they can trust, and they can also connect with their parents. So I think, one of the biggest thing is bringing awareness, that, we're looking at, the news is talking about, the opioid epidemic that's happening and the fentanyl. I mean, when it's getting to national news like that, and we're having these issues like that, and we're seeing crimes committed by kids, there's something going on. There's something way deeper going on. And that's kind of going back to my book, like what I'm talking about. It started with, a broken home and violence in my home, and watching drug abuse and alcohol abuse and all this other stuff that's happening at home. It has to come out somewhere. And again, we know, if you're watching the news, whether it's local or national, you're hearing about these things, these acts of violence or things that are going on, and it's terrible. And I think the biggest thing is to let people know that, you can get involved. A lot of the, a lot of like, I bring awareness to the tech community here, through churches. I speak at churches. I speak through local government agencies or counties hosting something this weekend that I'm speaking at. So just bringing awareness. I think the challenge is just letting people know, like, hey, look, you need to know this can blow up, and we need to be very proactive in helping guide our kids.
You mentioned that one of the challenges is just this fact that Silicon Valley, that's where you're at, and there's a persona, or there's a certain stereotype of what Silicon Valley is or represents, and it's not it's not what's going on in there. I mean, there's a whole host of other things. You mentioned there's the ultra rich and the ultra poor, but have the people that are in a better economic situation, have they been responsive to the needs of the community or to the City Peace Project?
Yeah, we do have some support from, the tech industry, as far as like they host us for tours. It's more on an individual basis, or like, there's Latino groups or faith groups that host us to come in, and the support. I mean, I don't think it's from the huge head of the company or from from the executives. It's more from the people that are hearing the message and want to help. A lot of these, a lot of, not just in the tech industry, a lot of people, are very busy and they're working a lot and they have to, of course, take care of themselves, but they also want to do something for their community. And the City Peace Project gives them a way, whether it's monetary donations or online tutoring, because they help with there's some that help us with tutoring or helping us with events in the community. We do a lot of events in our low income communities.
Yeah.
So there's a small response. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, small response better than no response.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
You're trying to gain traction on that. Looking back on this journey of building the City Peace Project, is there anything that you wish you would have known at the start of all of this that maybe you know now, and you could have done something differently?
I think it's not being afraid to ask for what I need. I think, yeah, I think there's I'm Latino, and in my culture, I'm Mexican, and, we're not, we kind of have this history of just like, hey, I'm going to do it. I'll take care of it, and, and I can only speak for my home, but, like, I didn't think I didn't want to ask people for help in the beginning, but I've noticed there's a lot of people that do want to help, but they need to know, they need to be aware of what's going on. That's what I was talking about, the awareness earlier. So, just making sure that we're getting a clear message out there. And I wish I would have known how easy it is just to be clear with people and share what's going on.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing that you bring up, and I feel that too a lot of times, actually. Just this, maybe it's not a fear, but there's a part of me that feels like, I can do it myself and I don't want to ask anyone for help. And I think that's something that affects a lot of us, men and women, regardless of cultural upbringings. But here you are trying to help these children, right? And one of the first steps that they need to do in order to get better is to actually ask for help.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be the toughest step of them all.
Yeah. That's what we teach, self-advocacy, to the kids. That's part of in our social emotional support. We try to teach them that, because there's a lot of frustration when they're not asking for help. And I dealt with it myself, whether it's pride or whether it's fear, whatever it might be, that I didn't want to ask for help or things like that. But the kids, we want to teach them, like, hey, if you need something, you need to be vocal about it. You need to ask for it.
Yeah. Where do you see the future of the City Peace Project going? Or in other words, I guess, what are some of your goals that you have set forth down the road for it?
Well, I see, the City Peace Project being a national and international, nonprofit in other cities. I actually was in a cohort recently and I had to write that. And, I do want to see the City Peace Project, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, in other cities, and supporting other, connecting with other communities. I have a really good relationship here with our local government and our local faith community and other nonprofits. So it's working well. And we currently are in our neighbor city, Milpitas, and we're starting to see it slowly start to move. And I do have, I am networking with people in other, areas, but that's really what I like to see is the City Peace Project in other cities, just connecting with kids.
Yeah, and that would be amazing. And hopefully we're obviously in Southern California. I mean, we represent people up and down California, but to the extent we can get the word out here in Southern California and make that connection, that'd be awesome. So one of the one of the things that I learned is you were actually awarded the White House Champion of Change in Youth Violence Prevention by President Barack Obama in 2012. Actually, I see that in the background. Is that
Yeah,
Barack Obama?
that's
That's
my
pretty. That's pretty
award.
awesome. What was that experience like?
Well, of course, it was a great experience, but people like it's in the book also, like the background. Like I was in a limbo because I had been incarcerated. I had a felony assault in my past, and I had to do a background check. This was something that you know, that I've had to deal with for a long time, shame and guilt of my past. I've been years beyond that, right? Years, it's behind me, expunged. But when they did the background check, they said, "Well, we're gonna have to wait for a response if you're cleared." And it was difficult, having that hang over my head. But I really felt like God wanted to show me that there's no door shut for me, in my life. There's no door that can be closed, and I found out 2 weeks later. It's funny because I did have a different color badge than the other recipients. There was 12 of us. Theirs were green. Mine was like this pinkish red one, and the guy was with me the whole time. So, but the overall experience, it was amazing and terrifying all at the same time. And it was a whirlwind. We were there for, I think about a little less than 24 hours. We flew in, went to the White House, um, it was just an amazing experience. And it's something that I share. I have, I'm able to share with the students I work with that anything's possible. I went from the big house, which is prison, to the White House. There's nothing that can stop, you from fulfilling whatever you want to do. Nothing's impossible. And that's what I want to share with these kids. But it starts because the Peace Project is all about having inner peace and having that peace be a part of your life. The book is about that, because I struggled with performing. I was performance based. Even when I was in the church or I was working, I was wearing myself out, and I didn't take time for self-care and healing and all these things, And I think, when I got to that place, like, when I really, those things are foreign to me, that I really got to say, what, like, I need to take care of myself. I need that peace. I've seen the amazing thing that I felt like God has done in my life. Being able to go to the White House. I've been able to travel, with other groups to other countries. People that were in the tech industry as a social entrepreneur, to the Middle East, to Israel, Mexico, and be connected in all these places that I never thought were possible.
It really is remarkable how much you can do. I mean, from the standpoint of, I saw these people and I just wanted to help. And I just felt like, I could be this shepherd and following that dream. And then while following that dream, to continually bring yourself to that place of inner peace. And I think for some people, I mean, I think that's a constant journey, always, because there's always something that can disrupt that inner peace or the struggles that we go through.
Hey, me also. I'm one of them. Still, I have to deal with the same thing. I don't have it all together, but yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, I think it's true for so many of us. There's always some degree of a situation or chaos that as human beings we're dealing with, whether it's in our professional lives or our personal lives, family, whatever it may be. But that's, I think, so important, because if you have that inner peace within yourself, right, that's the vibe and the energy and the things that you're going to be putting out to others as well, and really have the ability to love others. Right. And do those kind of powerful things.
Yeah, I think that's what's important. You brought that love, that word love, right? Is so important that people know you love them and you care about them. And that's what, where the peace comes from my heart. I can share that with other people. I felt love personally. I never felt it my entire life. And when I had my, transformation, I had a near-death experience, and I vomited blood, trying to clean out my system because I had to be bottled for parole. And this is a what do you call it, like a tale, like, if you drink Arm and Hammer, it'll clean out your system. And I drank a lot of Arm and Hammer.
Mm.
And when I fell on the floor after I vomited, and it started to look like blood. And I was like, if I die today, I flirted with death my whole life. I've been in car accidents. I've been stabbed 11 times. I've,
Wow.
been into all these crazy things. But when death faced me, I wanted to live. And for me personally, this is my journey. It was my faith. And I called out to Jesus, and I was like, I want to live. And since that moment in my life, I have never felt so alive. I've never felt so alive in my entire life. When I felt loved, like I was loved, I always felt disconnected from people, like I was a nuisance. Like I didn't, nobody cared. My dad was gone. My mom worked a lot. My grandparents were too old. There was no one there. But when I felt at that moment for my personal life, when I felt that the love, everything changed for me. And it was radical. I felt like a weight lifted. I feel it right now. I feel every time I talk about it, I get emotional because I know the power of love, of knowing that you're loved. And I think when you know that you're loved, you can love others. You can really love others. And I feel the love, and I feel the love in my family, and I feel it with the people that I work with. And there's walls being broken. And again, everybody has their own journey. I know that. I understand that. And I could just share mine. And I love where I'm at in my life right now. I'm happy. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to have a family. And I'm grateful that I feel like what I'm doing in this life is meaningful. And I think all of us have a purpose, right? That's from pain to purpose. And that's where, I find that peace looking back at myself. It's just something that, you know, that I know deep in my heart that I'm loved.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you shared
So
that.
that's powerful. And, we have a saying too, as just as a trial lawyer representing people, that, we try to love everybody. I mean, even, and it may sound weird, to love the other side, or the representative from the insurance company or whatnot, or a
Yeah.
judge that may be mad at you or giving you a hard time. But if you find that love, and it can be expressed in a lot of different ways, but,
Yeah.
one of it can be, empathy or whatnot, but it really changes the energy of the room. People respond to that. So powerful stuff. With respect to the program, the City Peace Project, obviously, you have this, amazing award, from President Barack Obama in 2012. But what would you say has been the most rewarding experience or experiences for you doing this program?
I think just seeing the kids be successful, and success can be many things, right? It could be passing a class. It could be reconciling with their parents. It could be graduating high school. It could be getting a job. I share with the kids, I say, what, success is doing what you love and being able to make a living, right? And for me to watch these kids transform and know who they really are, a lot of them have this wall around, but to see the change, that's the most rewarding thing for me, is to see the students, break out of that shell and be who they really are. And, I get messages all the time. I get messages from students that are working, and they're like, or they're going to college, or, even with my book in juvenile hall, kids will send me a message. I read your book 6 times, and it really helped me, to look beyond my current circumstance, not in those exact words, but that's what they're trying to share with me, So I that's the most rewarding thing, is to see that I'm a small part of their big picture. If I could just be a tiny part to bring peace and love into their life, that brings me joy.
Yeah. And that's what the City Peace Project's all about.
Yeah.
If somebody listening to this wants to, they're motivated or inspired by, what you've shared with us, and they want to go and start a program like yours in their city, what advice would you give them? Where can they turn for resources or help? Obviously, you as well. I'm sure they can reach out to you.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you tell them?
First of all, I'd say don't give up, because it's hard, just starting a program when especially like I had no help really. I had my wife's grandparents, bless their heart, they passed on. But there's a lot that comes with it, with creating a nonprofit, and so just don't give up. And it starts with one person at a time, and always genuinely love every person, whether you have hundreds of people in a room or one person in the room. And the practical thing to do is, connect with your local schools, connect with your local government, because all cities have, parks and recreation. That's part of our connection to the gang task force. It's through our parks and rec. That's where it's under that umbrella. And just find out different ways, whether they're starting the program or they're volunteering for another program. There's always ways to get connected locally through your city, and through churches. If they have a faith background, get connected through your church. There's a lot of ways that they can get started. And of course, they can get a hold of me.
Yeah. And if we want to learn more about you, the City Peace Project, where can our listeners, our audience, go to find out more about that?
The citypeaceproject.org is our website. The City Peace Project on Instagram, they can check that out. Danny Sanchez on Facebook. The City Peace Project on YouTube. They can get a hold of me through all those directly. I do respond. And for the book, they can find a copy of our book on Amazon. Here's the cover of our book, Post Traumatic Quest. It's available on Amazon or posttraumaticquest.com. They want to learn more about that. And those are the best ways, to see what we're doing. Again, Instagram shows all the cool stuff and the joy of the kids and us hanging out and being able. There's a lot of other stuff that happens throughout the day. We're doing one-on-ones. We're doing, meeting students one-on-one for individual case management. We're checking in with them. We're doing groups. We're doing a lot of stuff. But you'll see the highlights of our day during lunch and after school.
Well, Danny, the world is lucky to have somebody like you, really there for our youth and spreading that love and showing them what's possible. So thank you just so much for your work in the community. And hopefully this story will have inspired a number of people to continue to give back in the community and maybe even start their own peace project and connect with you. So that dream of having them, worldwide and nationally comes true. So thank you for sharing all of this and thank you for being on The Verdict.
Hey, Tom, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. It's great to just talk with you and, learn more about you. I've watched some of your other podcasts and I feel very honored to be on your show. Thank you so much.
The pleasure's mine and the honor's mine, but thank you, Danny.